Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. This time, Timescape. Yeah, sounds like an 80s movie, but it's an episode from a 90s TV show. Timescape on It's All Been Tracked Before. Go back in time with us, or forward in time, and just spend some time with us on Facebook. It's All Been Tracked Before. It's spelled like it sounds. It's all been tracked before. Lots of fun going on there. Lots of fun pokes at us, pokes at you, pokes at Star Trek, pokes at everything. Go, laugh, engage with us. Tell us what you think about what's going on with us here on Facebook. It's All Been Tracked Before. And this is It's All Been Tracked Before, and this is Timescape on It's All Been Tracked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And the mostly healthy Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk the episode Timescape. Now, you guys talk while I freeze for 3 minutes and then pretend like no time has passed.
I didn't know.
For a second, I thought you were actually referring to the times when we actually freeze to our perception.
I made that note that for Patreon viewers, this episode will seem very similar to watching us with the freezing every once in a while.
First impressions on Timescape.
I don't know. I'm a sucker for time gimmick episodes, and this isn't quite the kind that I like as well. But there was something fun about the science mysteries of it, and I did enjoy the way that they had to keep challenging their assumptions about certain things. Although I think the actual explanation at the end ended up being something a little, I don't want to say rote, but just frustrating in the sense of that, we've seen this twist before, especially when it is this kind of twist with this thing that, but, it was a good puzzle.
Yeah, I think the setup was more interesting than the conclusion, but I did like the way they, as you say, they set up these expectations, and they're like, oh no, that's not what was happening here. Not exactly Rashomon, that it was 4 different viewpoints, but it was just, oh no, you thought this was going on, it was this. I know there's some kind of thing in Highlights or one of those kids magazines that does that thing, or maybe I'm thinking of Mad Magazine. No, it's Mad Magazine. That makes more sense. So I enjoyed that part, even though it was a little cheesy. It's definitely not the best time travel episode because, of course, that's City on the Edge of Forever, but and it always will be. But so far, at least, I don't know. Maybe I've none of these, but I'm kind of with you, Keith. I enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, I think my expectations are relatively low because season 6 has been pretty uneven, and definitely a step down from season 5. And I mentioned to a friend of ours, or at least some of our, Ben Niedenthal, I mentioned that we were near the end of season 6 recently, and he goes, "Oh, so you're past all the good stuff."
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
My expectations were relatively low, but maybe that's why I was pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed this episode. I won't say it's like the best Trek episode ever by any means, and I agree with you. City on the Edge of Forever is far superior. Yeah. I wouldn't even say it's the second or third best time travel we've seen thus far, but I enjoyed this episode. So this episode starts, Riker's got an injury. It's a scratch. Crusher's giving him trouble about he's getting too old to play Parisi squares, basically. But
So we talked about this off mic in our group chat, or I did, I guess. Right off the bat, one, it looks like he got attacked by a sea lot, Spock's pet on Vulcan. I don't understand people that don't like cats, and I have a natural distrust of them. And there's I have plenty of friends that aren't cat people, and I get that. And there's people that are allergic, but I didn't like Riker saying that, and so it just put me right off. And I was like, he's just Mr. Annoying Person. And why, if you don't like cats, why are you volunteering? Why don't you just say, hey, you know what? I don't like cats. You should have somebody else take care of it. There's 1,000 people on the ship. And
well, you don't want to hurt Data's feelings,
You're getting a little ahead of yourself. Maybe we're caught in a time thing. Maybe it's a time.
I was just glad we had a first of all, a Spot reference. And second of all, it did lead to us finding out that Crusher likes cats. So that just makes me think more highly of her.
Yes, exactly. Yep, that's exactly where I went. First I wrote down I was going to have a drink with her, but we'll get to that later.
So then we go to the runabout, where Picard, Data, Troy, and Geordi are on a runabout. We know what a runabout is from Deep Space Nine.
That's right. It's
like a better shuttle. It's got warp engines and stuff, and it can go further, faster, stronger, better. Now, we haven't seen on Deep Space Nine. We've only seen the cockpit of the runabout, so it was fun to see what's in the back of the runabout. However, that sent me on a little deep dive on my own. I was looking for a blueprint of the runabout because essentially the impression I have is we've got the cockpit that we've seen, and then probably just this one other room, right? With a table, chairs, bunk beds built into the walls. I'm sure one of those little panels is a bathroom. Who knows? But as I looked it up on Memory Alpha and stuff, it turns out on Deep Space Nine, over 7 seasons, we only ever see the cockpit. The only time Star Trek shows the back room of the runabout is in this episode of Next Generation, which is the only time a runabout is used in Next Generation. So I thought that was an interesting thing. I also found that apparently the back room is a module, and you can make it a cargo room or a bunch of different things depending on your needs. So the cockpit and the warp engines are a sled that can go be lifted off and put on a different backroom module. But we'll never see another version because this is it. This is the whole backroom of Trek thus far.
So when you're describing the things that you can modify, you mean within the sense of the world, or within the sense of the model that they're using to reuse for filming purposes? No,
I'm talking about within the world. So this is what Memory Alpha says is basically a runabouts modular, and it's made so you can this is a personnel transport that 4 people can hang out in, but that could instead be a cargo transporter. It could be a few different I can't remember what else they said, but there are a few different things, which is really neat. I wish they'd done more with the runabouts now, and solidifies that I like runabouts better than shuttles quite a bit. I think runabouts are really awesome.
I hadn't realized that there was even a distinction, but I really appreciate the thought that would go into something like that.
Yeah, just too bad their thoughts really didn't make it on screen much. So Troy and Picard, they're all talking about the conference they went into, and they all went to different sessions. And man, it seemed out of character to me. I don't know if it did for you, for Picard, talking about the Admiral who just kept talking on and running sentences and just kept changing topics and one. I don't see Picard mocking, and I don't know if it's out of character or if we just see him finally loosening up after 6 years with these people.
I thought it was just they were like, let's show off the accent work that these actors can do. I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way necessarily, because I thought it was fairly entertaining. I did wonder, and I kind of answered my own question, but I just get you guys in on this. Oh, they're talking about the guy clearly, propositioning Troy,
right?
And they're all having a good laugh about it. I was like, is that okay? Is that okay for them to do that? Because then I thought about Anchorman. The whole time they're sexually harassing Veronica Corningstone. And it's funny, and it's also funny because they're idiots, and she kind of gives them their comeuppance and all that, and whatever. But at the end of the day, I still find it funny, and I know they're sexually harassing her, and it's supposed to be the 70s, which still doesn't make it okay.
I think the difference might be here. He was not a superior to her, so there's no power.
Oh, that's true.
That way.
That's true.
And it sounded like when she said no, he took no for an answer. That's you can preposition somebody as long as you're not forcing, right?
That's a good distinction. That's a very good distinction. Yeah, I went immediately to the pejorative place. That helps me out a lot. Yeah, that makes more sense. He's like, hey, you want to do this? No? Okay.
Yeah,
they
were all like, yeah, that guy.
And they were all like, oh, actually, he's really good at this. Maybe you should have. But
that's good. I don't.
That actually makes me go back and laugh at Data saying, well, so did you do the research?
Yeah. And I think that was really the whole point of setting up that joke is like, oh, Data, you're so literal.
Right. Yeah.
No, I think is to Jimmy's question, I think it was probably more the latter. I think this is the rapport they built up. And sure, as I'm fond of doing, I think is most of us are really, is just splitting it between the backstage explanation, so to speak, and the character explanation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think probably there's a lot of that involved. I think sometimes they bring up little things. Hey, wouldn't it be fun if we did something like this? Okay, now this brings a good chance for a moment between these characters to do something a little more familiar,
Mm-hmm. So everyone freezes except for Troy briefly. And then Data and the ship's computer came and find the 4 to 5 seconds, which is a really interesting mystery because you're like, Data's computer should not so the computer should have some record.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting the episode stayed from Troy's perspective, both when everybody else froze and then when she froze. Both times we're getting her viewpoint of it, which was a good way for us to see both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When she went through hers, it reminded me of the one, other than coming out of surgery, that's another time where it's like, I'm looking here and then I wake up and I'm looking at something totally different.
So their next time skip, it's 47 days, which is a pretty drastic escalation of things. The fruit is so spoiled. But then when he reaches for it, I'm like, whoa, wait. At first I thought it was something around that table because Troy was at the table both times things happened. And then his Picard's hand. Whew.
The fashion and sew people said, all right, you got a bunch of fruit, and then it goes bad, and then it gets even worse. So what do? You just leave it sitting there. It's like, okay, yeah. You should probably get rid of that.
So they get to the Enterprise and stuck in what looks like a battle with the Romulans. Obviously, we find out it's not a battle. But at the moment, like, we're like, oh, God, they're blowing each other up. That stinks.
It was a trap all along, just the way they set it up at the beginning. I like that.
Well, it looks like they're mid-invasion, too, because they beam over and there's Romulans on board and the one's, like, standing over Riker as he's on the ground. And then the other one's, like, killing Dr. Crusher. The beaming over with the armbands, I liked the armband. It was a nice, simple way to just be like, okay, something odd's happening. This is whatever. We're not going to, like, really dig into it. Let's just give you an easy explanation. But, yeah, I also liked the fake out, that what we were seeing was not actually what was happening.
Yeah, I thought all those setups were great. And like even the static shot of the battle was like kind of cheesy, but also kind of cool. I liked it both ways. Like every time I went back, I looked at something different on it. And I guess they kind of did too. So I like that.
Well, I'm sorry. That's like one of the effects I like about these kinds of things, or these kinds of time, not necessarily loop, but they're kind of going back and forth to explore those details. I wanted to go back further for a moment. The detail about, let's start with Troy's perspective and some of the conversations they were having as they were discovering these things. I thought about perhaps the writing purposes of these sorts of interactions. You have the 4-person crew comprised of certain people for certain reasons, and starting with Troy was a good way to have the empath up front answer certain kinds of questions. And I started thinking about I can't remember specific details at the moment, but I remember as Picard was laying out certain plans, I could hear somehow that the writing involved, almost like they were thinking backwards from let's have this problem set up. How would you describe it? What are the plot holes that might come up if someone asks about it? Like, okay, so why are they doing it this way? Or why didn't we try to do this? And that kind of thing. We've seen that every now and then. I think even when I can see it, I think that's usually a sign of good writing in that sense. I might be wrong. I think we've talked about that before.
I thought about the same thing. I was watching an episode of Velma, the new Velma series. I don't know if you guys have caught that on HBO Max.
No, like Scooby-Doo.
No, but I'm familiar with what it is.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Everything Mindy Kaling is doing for HBO Max, I love so far. I was thinking the same thing because there's an ongoing mystery in that one. I'm like, all right, so they had to figure out how that was going to work first, and then kind of work back through all the with all the things were going to be in it. So yeah, I was thinking, I think that makes a lot of sense. Especially in a time travel one. Do you guys remember the challenge a few years back where everyone just froze? Do you guys remember that? I know our mothership did a promo video of it.
I think it was the mannequin challenge.
Mannequin challenge, that's what it was. That's what
Yeah, you're right. IBD presents on our YouTube channel. We've got one.
Like a 360 shot of somebody, kind of going around through the.
Yeah. So that's what
that was fun.
I thought about doing this. Just to back up one fashion note. Picard looks like he has Lee press-on nails. His nails are grown over the 47 days, and they're so nicely manicured too. And actually, my friends at Fashion It So said the same. Tumblr said the same thing. They're like, "Yeah, they just sent someone out to press on nails." Somehow, I'm kind of proud of that.
When we're in sick bay, the Romulan wakes up after Troy leaves Beverly, which you're like, okay. At that point, I started to think this is just like the next phase when Ro and Geordi go out of phase with everybody else, and there's a Romulans out of phase with them. And obviously this is an anomaly in the Romulan engine, something they're working on. And at first I thought they were experimenting with something new. Apparently they weren't. It was like total accident this has happened. But yeah, I was like, whoa, is this just the next phase again?
That's another good example. That didn't occur to me immediately. I'm not even sure if I even made that connection, but I certainly got that kind of feeling. And I think that was kind of the point of a lot. We were talking about this at the beginning of the episode. Just all those, I love those misdirects they kept dropping in there. All the little red herrings, the subtle things that are going to make you think, oh, it's one of these, And I certainly did like the payoff in that sense.
Well, then we see Worf transporting the Romulans on board, which is definitely a mystery.
Yep.
The fact that Worf's transporting them on board, you're like, okay, there's definitely more than meets the eye now. The mystery is deepened and it's gotten more complex. And then we get to the warp core breach, and I knew the Enterprise D is not destroyed in this episode, but I have to say I felt
Well-
the stakes. I felt the stakes. I felt not that I thought the ship was going to be destroyed, but I was like, how the heck are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Because like they said, it's already happening. We can't stop it.
Right.
Like, wow. Just moving very slowly, but fast enough for Data's eyes to perceive it, but not for ours. I liked that distinction.
That's a great way of putting it too. Again, the purpose of each person to be on that crew to give you a sort of feeling or analysis, and also again, yeah, it's like, this is getting stranger and stranger. How would they get out of this? That kind of feeling.
Yeah, I had the very same reaction, Jimmy. Like, I know they're getting out of it, but what, how? Yeah, what?
Yeah. I was interested. It had
I
me.
felt despondent. even though I knew they were going to.
It had me. The thing that didn't have me, though, and this was really bothering me, with both the warp core and the scene with the Romulans with their disruptors out, Troy and Picard seemed totally unfazed to walk in front of drawn disruptors or like right up to the warp core breach. And as far as they know, like, I know they have those armbands and they're putting so much faith in Geordi's engineering. But as far as they know, time could suddenly snap back and then they're in danger, but they're not at all phased to walk right through the danger. And that bothered me. That took me out of it a bit. I'm sure they're brave, and I'm sure they'd be a lot braver than I would be in that situation. But I still think it was unrealistic for somebody to, like, Troy not to cringe a little bit when walking right past where the beam was already pointed.
Yeah.
Why does Picard start giggling about the smiley face?
They said it was some sort of, they called it something temporal narcosis. Data was comparing it to like the bends somehow.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
They have to take Geordi's armband off, and like he whips out of phase right in the engineering in front of Romulans and stuff. And that was, again, I'm like, stakes are up here. I'm scared. I don't know how they're getting out of this. I did appreciate that they referenced Troy's time with the Romulans. Like, hey, you were on a ship. You know how this works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anytime they actually had continuity in, I get excited.
I love the callbacks. Yeah.
Another good purpose for the character being on the mission.
So that's why I love that episode so much.
And then the Enterprise is destroyed and time resumes. Woo! That was intense.
Yeah.
I don't know what that sound was I just made, but woo! Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was Steven. That's funny.
When the one Romulan, which we find out is not a Romulan, moves, Keith, you'll appreciate this. I went, whoa.
I had a behind the scenes theory for why Geordi was put back into the timeline and the rest were out. And I came up with it in the very next scene where we see Troy and Picard and Data together. It's because we had 2 gold shirts and we needed one of each color to be better balanced.
Sure.
So we had to get loose Data or Geordi so that we'd have one of each color.
Really?
I don't think that's the thing. I'm just saying. To me, I was like, as an aesthetic, I'm like, oh, now it's all balanced. I liked that.
That reminds me of the fact that they were, when they were like, Geordi's like, I can't afford, we can't risk beaming you. I don't have the power. And they're like, well, Jeffrey's tube. And so we get to see a shot of everyone going down one floor.
Yeah. And then there's other people stuck.
Yeah, that was weird.
That was fun.
Creepy.
I liked it. Yeah, it was creepy. It was creepy in a good way.
Yeah.
I'd like to set up this scene. What's a good explanation for it? There we go. This is the reason why they need to go in there, and well, we're fine. Okay, yeah, makes sense. I think since you mentioned that, it seems like they were sort of rotating people out. Picard had the sickness, so he had to sit this one out for a bit. Let's make another 3-person configuration and kind of keep moving things along and playing with the
change the dynamics.
The roles that they would need to play, or the person would have to. We can't quite do it this way because this person's over here. That sort of thing.
That's good.
Yeah,
and the Jeffrey's tube is always good for some good different camera shots and angles. I
mean, we still need that like slanted down angle, but that's okay. We get it in Strange New Worlds.
Can you guys tell me what transdimensional space is?
Of course. It's space that's between moves between dimensions, right? Okay. That's what trans means.
I guess that makes sense.
It's fluid between dimensions.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
I dated in transdimensional space for a while, and I ended up coming back to hetero. But I had a lot of fun while I was in there. So
those sites are out there.
No, I think Jimmy jokingly, even on the first try, was probably pretty close to. I think thinking it through is probably the sort of like a conduit, or like you're in a subway tunnel between it or something, for lack of a better way.
Well, we actually deal with transdimensional space next week with the transdimensional highway, basically, or the transwarp corridors that the Borg open. So transwarp is something I guess we're going to explore more of going forward in Star Trek. And the transwarp corridors the Borg open carry into future episodes and series. So
I just say that's very progressive of them.
Yeah. I mean, this was the 90s, so it was extremely progressive in the 90s. Good for them. We find out the Romulans, the two aliens that are out of the time, are trying to save their young from the core. And that starts, I think it was Steven that said at the beginning that this feels like a bunch of different episodes combined.
Yeah.
I mean, we got lights again that are sentient. We got trying to save young. I do think, though, this was a satisfying remix to me in a way that a lot of times when Trek starts to repeat itself, especially late in the run, I am bored and I'm like, I've seen this before. Yeah. Whereas I feel like this took elements that were familiar but found a new way to approach them. So I didn't feel that same fatigue.
Yep. It was like a not jambalaya. What am I thinking of? Gumbo, yes. It was a satisfying gumbo.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I tried to rescue them as soon as he said there's one other. And of course, I think this was on purpose that the writers had the crew going, who is he? Let's look for him, even though we'd already seen the woman Romulan move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I don't think they would have jumped to such a gender conclusion in the 24th century. That was very 1990s of them. But yeah, of course, we already knew where that was. And that felt like they were trying a little too hard for misdirect there.
Mm-hmm.
Data will control time. He gets to move time backwards, which was neat. Mm-hmm. But also, that's the part of the science I didn't fully believe.
Yeah, seems convenient.
It was very convenient because you got to undestroy the Enterprise and save Beverly's life.
Yeah.
And then they all tried to talk like Twin Peaks. They were all in the Red Room in Twin Peaks. It was rock. They kept the sound low, so you didn't get the reference, in my opinion, because Twin Peaks at this point would have already aired. So I feel like they were stealing from Twin Peaks there, but I wish they'd let the audio be a little louder so we could fully appreciate it.
They when they had them moving backwards, it was just obviously they were just reversing the film.
The misunderstandings, the Riker one, I totally bought, where he was falling and the Romulan was trying to help him, not shove him. But the Beverly one seems a stretch because Beverly's like, it's okay, he was shooting at somebody else. Yeah, but he hit you. If they had not rewound time, you would be dead. That's more than a misunderstanding. That went a little far on the misdirect.
She probably doesn't know that she actually got hit.
Yeah,
I think if they had, I think what we should have seen is, to make that make more sense, is maybe just him aiming with his finger on the trigger rather than an actual beam pulling out.
I agree.
I know that would have been less dramatic, but I think it would have felt a little more understandable at that point.
What would you swap in as something that is comparable for stakes and something that would be almost like a smoking gun? There's like, oh my God, she's going to die if we don't do it in this way, and they're causing it, that kind of thing.
So here's the thing: the beam's halfway to her.
Okay.
But what we did, if we had the beam halfway to her, and then if we'd started, instead of saving the Romulan reveal of moving for the end of the scene, if we'd seen that Romulan in front of the beam and then have them move before Troy walks in and then they freeze to hide, first of all, that makes the tension ratchet up on that scene because that person is hiding. But second of all, then you see how the misunderstanding is truly a misunderstanding because he's firing at this other alien, not at Crusher.
Well, I agree for the most part, but I wouldn't want to know that too soon. I kind of like the way of when we first see that Romulans just like they were frozen and then they move. It's like, oh, it's this thing.
Yeah,
if we see that intention of I have to hide from this, and we would figure out the rest of it too quickly. I think.
So Keith, to your argument, we could have just seen the beam halfway to Crusher earlier in the episode.
Yeah,
and the move reveal at the end of the scene is normal, but then when they reverse time, we then see the Romulan move out of the way.
Okay, yeah.
That fix it?
Yes.
Okay. They have to sacrifice the runabout. That's a shame. Next gen's only runabout. It hurt.
Essentially, between TOS and TNG, especially TNG, shuttles are so disposable, man.
They are.
I can see
and runabouts seem like they're a lot more expensive.
Yeah, I can see why they made the shuttles into they had the smart car version of the shuttle where it's just like 2 seats and not much else. These things are blowing up all over the place.
I mean, I assume by the point of next gen, they're replicating new ones. We don't see it, but in Star Trek Prodigy, that's set just a few years later, they can replicate a shuttle whenever they need it.
Right.
I assume we just didn't see it, but they can replicate shuttles. I don't think they have to order them from Earth and wait for them to come in.
Right.
My question was, because it all happened so fast when they restarted time, I was like, did they really evacuate that warbird completely? But then the captain's log says they did, so I guess it's okay.
Yeah.
It's going to take a little time to explain, number one, says Picard at the end. And I'm like, probably about 43 minutes, right? 44.
Data
initial time.
says time is something we have plenty of, and I don't know that it was an allusion to this, speaking of callbacks, but the line I thought of was in Wrath of Khan when David Marcus says, when they're trapped down on Regular One, we appear to have plenty of time. A lot of the same words in the stew. So, but it immediately took me there, which I actually like that line. And then that's when he's like, come on, and he takes Saavik and McCoy and I guess Chekhov to go get food. So Carol and Kirk can have their little conversation.
Is there a line? Is that the same movie where like time is an enemy that stalks us or whatever? And then later at the end, there's like a resolution of no, time is a companion that goes with us.
There's a lot of time talking.
There's a lot of time. That whole trilogy, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of time stuff, themes.
When they do the code and they beam back up. Well, I guess he doesn't say time. He's like minutes instead of hours. Now we have hours instead of.
Well, and the best of times, the worst of times. Just those whole three. That whole trilogy is just so focused on time.
It is. Yeah.
And honestly, the 5th and the 6th movies are concerned with time and aging as well. Once you get past that first Star Trek movie, the rest of the Kirk movies are about time and being old.
Yep.
As a punishment.
Somehow they keep getting more relatable to people.
And yet the next gen actors are all much older as they do Star Trek Picard season 3 than the series actors were in the films, and they're not as focused on time. Someone once told me time is a predator that stalked us all our lives. I rather believe that time is a companion that goes with us on the journey and reminds us to cherish every moment because it will never come again. Oh, sorry. That isn't a movie we haven't seen yet. That's Star Trek Generations.
Okay.
Picard, but he's talking about having talked to Kirk. So it's all connected. Okay. It's all part of that because he talks to a version of Kirk that's totally in line with the films and when Kirk's films were. So, okay. Because I see the quote ends with, what we leave behind is not as important as how we've lived. After all, number one, we're only mortal. Which I happen to remember, even though it doesn't say it on screen, that Riker's like, speak for yourself, Jean-Luc, I plan on living forever. And also, the S9 series finale is what we leave behind and talks about what we leave behind. So Star Trek is very concerned with that. That is a theme. Anyway, sorry, Keith, I feel like I avoided spoiling much there, but maybe you disagree.
I tuned out after a bit.
Good, I was being cognizant of trying not to spoil. So up to that last scene, Riker comes in. I love that he's looking for Spot nervously because he doesn't like get scratched yet. Even though pressure here.
The search for Spot.
I love it.
That's what I thought you were saying first.
Data's testing the theory a watch pot never boils. Riker says you need to turn off your internal chronometer.
Yeah.
Just don't be late for your shift. I enjoyed that whole exchange.
It was very cheesy.
Eyebrow sold it.
Not bad way, in my opinion.
It made me think, he said, well, I don't know, I think Riker says, well, humans don't have internal chronometers, but we do. We do have, there's the biological mind clock that Kramer talks about on Seinfeld. He's like, I don't need an alarm. I just 7 o'clock, I'll be up. But there's circadian rhythms and all that stuff. So there is some validity to that. I mean, we all have alarm clocks, but if we didn't, we still are kind of, it's not a perfect program. It's not quite as rock solid as a chronometer, but we do have some of those in there. So
my alternate episode, and I swear I've seen this on like The Flash or Superman, Smallville or something, is that they have to evacuate manually all the people before that warp core breach explode. Like they can't reverse time, so the warp core breach is coming anyway, and you see like Data running through the ship and grabbing each person individually and beaming them away or moving Crusher out of the path of the disruptor beam and just all of those things, and then they restart time.
There was Futurama, and there was also a couple of the X-Men movies with Quicksilver.
Right. Oh yeah, Quicksilver adjusting people. Yep.
Yeah.
It's in my brain because we've seen it in pop culture 50 times. But at this point, it would have been new and fresh.
True. There's such
you have an
a great
alternate episode?
Yeah, the one I had is, I would have liked it if they just kept jumping around to like 47 days, 35 days ago, 2 minutes ago, 12 seconds, which then when you get into the seconds thing, that now I'm into Galaxy Quest, at the end, that whole thing and stuff. So, and I was going down a similar road, Jimmy, of like thinking of all the all the time travel things and episodes, and Assignment Earth, and a fun one. Tomorrow's Yesterday, not a good one. There's quite the spectrum of from bad to amazing.
When we first started watching TNG, I kept assuming that, oh, this time episode must be this one that's coming up, and it still hasn't come up. It's probably something next season. It seemed to stick out to me because they used to replay it quite a bit toward the end, and I'm surprised we haven't gotten there yet. But we'll see it. It's one of my favorite kinds of, oh, we need to solve this before this loop ends kind of things,
Time.
So this episode was written by Brad Braga, who's one of the big Trek guys at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He's very into heady sci-fi concepts. I think we've mentioned this in the past. I didn't realize until right now that he's been the showrunner for The Orville all 3 seasons.
Oh, wow.
I know Seth MacFarlane created it, but Brandon Braga is listed as showrunner for all 3. But he was a producer of Cosmos and Cosmos, the second Cosmos. That's probably how he knows Seth MacFarlane. Terra Nova, Flash Forward, Threshold, some of these sci-fi shows that came after Star Trek. And he'll write the first 2 next-gen films with Ron D. Moore. So
nice.
It makes sense it would be a high-concept sci-fi show for him. It was directed by Adam Nimoy, his second of the 2 episodes of Next Gen he directs. He directed Rascals previously, and this is the only other Star Trek episode he'll direct of Next Gen. Maybe. No, that's it. He only directed Next Gen. He never directed Deep Space Nine, which is funny because he married one of the main DS9 cast members. But
well, maybe that's why.
Terry Farrell. I don't think they got married till after DS9 was over. I think. I'd have to look him up. But yeah. So yeah, Adam Nimoy, one of his 2 Star Trek episodes he directed. We're already past. That's it. No more Adam Nimoy direction until we do our special episode on the For Love of Spock documentary, which we definitely will at some point. Let's get to ranking. Oh, I was sorry. I was just checking. He didn't marry Terry Farrell until 2018, and I'm just now reading on Wikipedia they divorced in 2022. They were only married 4 years. Back in the 90s, he would have been married to Nancy Nimoy. They were married for 20 years, it looks like, before he remarried Martha Nimoy, who died, and then Terry Farrell. That bums me out that Adam Nimoy and Terry Farrell separated. Who was your annoyance this week?
Mine was Riker. I addressed all that earlier. Yeah.
I mean, mine was the aliens. Mine was the aliens. I'm sorry. I didn't like them, and I didn't like the way they went about things. I feel like all they had to do was ask for help, and this was solved real quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, same for the aliens. What was it about Riker? I missed it.
He
doesn't like cats.
Oh, right. Yes.
That's a non-starter for me.
That is a good point, actually.
Must Love Cats is the Star Trek movie I'm going to write.
I mean, I agree with you, but I'll date a dog lover as long as they tolerate cats. Keith, who was your annoyance in Second Chances?
Probably Lieutenant Riker.
Okay. Good old Thomas. Who are you having a drink with? Let's start with Keith in Second Chances. Who are you having a drink with?
Oh, Mzadi, of course.
Troy or Riker? Or which one exactly?
Troy.
Okay, Troy. Okay, great. I was having a drink with Franks because I just want to talk to him about this, whereas Steven chose to have a drink with Tom Riker. So that's funny that
that's pretty good,
by
actually.
Tom Riker. Who are we having a drink with in Timescape?
I thought about Ensign Great Haircut, who was very well frozen, and then there's Engineer, also similarly great haircut. 2 different actresses, but I ended up landing on Spot as I was having my drink, watching the episode with Chloe. Just speaking of callbacks, to bring it all the way back to the episode. So yeah, Spot. Who do we ever see Spot?
Yeah, we've seen him before.
We already did. Okay.
Yeah.
But in the
He's
episode,
an orange tabby. We'll see him again.
That's right.
No, not in this. We'll see him again.
Okay.
Actually, Spot's been played by like 7 different cats over the years. We'll see Spot again. And a lot of them are female cats, even though he's a male. Anyway, I'm having a drink with Picard, especially the beginning where it seems like he's loosened up and is fun and talking about the guy that drones on and on and on unbroken sentence. I like that version of Picard. I'm glad to see him finally loosen up. I think that's kind of a mirror of Patrick Stewart, although Patrick Stewart apparently loosened up in season 2. They just took a while to show Picard. And I will say I was listening to the Deep Space Nine podcast with Sarah Lofton and Aaron Eisenberg, Jake and Dog. Obviously, I'm almost at the end of that podcast or at least Aaron Eisenberg's time, because he died right after they finished season 1 before they started season 2. But they mentioned that Michael Dorn always seemed kind of standoffish on the set. They weren't sure if it was because he was like I'm a new guy, I don't want to make waves.
Mhm.
And they said they talked to him like recently, long after doing DS9. And he's like, well, the next gen cast was just so fun, and you guys were like serious, we're working. Or maybe they were talking about, they heard him say in an interview. But yeah, I guess DS9 was a lot more professional on set, whereas next gen, especially in the later years, was very jokey on set. So they're all still like good buddies that love to joke. And the other Star Trek casts aren't.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it did not
Kinda like us,
translate
how
on
serious we
screen
are.
for me. I would not have guessed that. I don't feel like the jokey nature of the TNG's cast Spawn has translated on screen. But
Well, it's like our podcast. We're very serious. Just look at some of the other Star Trek podcasts out there that are like, oh, let's yuck it up.
Mission Log, all about yucking it up. Whereas we're serious like the Greatest Generation guys, the Greatest Trek. No, obviously the opposite. Keith, who are you going to drink with?
Right, I guess Troy again in this case.
Okay.
Similar reasons, the impressions and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think she's finally coming into her own as a character 6 seasons in. I've enjoyed Troy in this season more than I have in the first 5, and we can talk about that more in our season and wrap up it here in 2 weeks, but or an hour.
The passionate so people, my favorite Star Trek Tumblr, TNG Tumblr, they did a freeze frame of her doing her impersonation of that guy, and they're like, yeah, this just proves no matter what you do, Marina Sirtis is going to look great. It doesn't matter what.
I feel like she feels more comfortable in the uniform, and it shows.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. You mentioned that a couple weeks ago, or actually several weeks ago, because it's one of our most recent ones to drop in real time. And this episode, I was paying special attention. I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
she looks great, and she feels
the character feels
ridiculous.
Better.
Yes, exactly. Feels relaxed. Yep.
Ranking the episode, I kind of want to put it towards the top. I enjoyed it, but I won't go too high because I feel like you guys aren't going to want it to go too high. Huh. Let's start in the range of. Let's compare it to Second Chances. Why not? The most recent episode, the Tom Riker. Better, worse than Second Chances.
Comparable. I might put it above. Actually, it's hard to. I mean, just I would say even outside of my own subjective enjoyment, I could tell that even like your enjoyment of it sort of elevated it a bit. So.
Oh, good.
It's that kind of a mutual. Yes, this it's something you would imagine having a good time watching with people. That kind of thing. So.
I rewatched this episode very happily. Yeah. If we were going pure enjoyment, I'd kick it up right underneath Relic's 5th of the season. I don't think that's where it should be because I think we need to evaluate how good it was more from a more objective scale, I guess.
Sure.
Right.
So, I mean, Rightful Heir is number 10 and Relic's is number 4. I don't think it belongs 6 kicks above, Second Chances is number 11. I don't think it belongs 6 or 7 spots above this. In fact, I think I want to go below Second Chances in terms of what it does for the show and the quality of the episode itself. But if I was going pure enjoyment, like I said, I think I'd put it number 5. I'd kick it way up.
Yeah, I think we're in the right range because I think I would go below 2, but not by a lot. By a hair.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry,
I think
we're leaving you behind. We're going down.
Okay. Well, I think you pointed out the point that I would want to make, which is the factor of what it does for the show. I wouldn't say that it elevated a lot. It didn't really add as much for characterization or lore or anything like that. It's just sort of like, this is an enjoyable thing to do.
I would argue it actually does build on both continuity and character development, but I think it's more subtle builds. Like seeing Picard loosen up, referencing Troy's time on the Romulan ship. True. I think it belongs in the tapestry more than a lot of standalone episodes, but it doesn't do anything significant that's going to be remembered for.
Yeah, good way of putting it.
So if you were going above Second Chances, Keith, above that's Rightful Heir, would you go above Rightful Heir?
No.
Okay. So you're okay. Below Second Chances is Frame of Mind. I
think these are pretty comparable.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough for me. I will say, like I mentioned that right below Rightful or Frame of Mind is Face of the Enemy, where Troy's goes on the Romulan ship. I definitely think it's above Face of the Enemy. But whether it goes above or below Frame of Mind, I'm torn.
I would go below. I was going to say Second Chances was kind of arbitrary for me as far as deciding which one is going to go above. But
below the insane Riker.
The Riker showcase, or I guess the Frakes showcase of acting.
Yeah,
I think certainly puts it above that.
We got Frame of Mind and Second Chances back to back in our rankings. Both Frakes showcases, both good.
Yeah, I think I might go below as well.
Okay, so we'll put it below Frame of Mind. Anyone gonna argue with me? It should go. I think it should go above Face of the Enemy.
I love Face of the Enemy, so
That's tough.
I don't have a good argument because I don't think that's a great this all makes sense episode because from the drop it makes zero sense. But I'm there for it because it's crazy.
So you're good with putting it there, but you have a soft spot for that episode.
I would go below. Maybe, I guess. This is a good spot because it goes back to the argument we were talking about earlier. Like I know Face of the Enemy, I might watch more than almost all the episodes this season just because it's crazy to me.
Just for reference, below that's The Chase, where they go find the planet where everybody evolved from the same DNA.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think it goes above that. That episode wasn't that strong.
Yeah.
Fair. I mean, both those episodes you're talking about are ones I enjoy for the craziness of them too. Especially when you started talking about Face the Enemy, I really started thinking about it. That makes me laugh. Thinking just the concept of how it went through it. Just the drop in of like, where am I? What am I doing? What just happened? What you drugged me? Put me? What? Okay, we're improvising in 5 seconds. Let's go. Like what? that kind of thing.
Yes, and me.
Next week, Descent, which does not have part 1 listed after it on IMDb or in the official episode, but I swear my DVD says Descent part 1, and I bet Netflix, Paramount Plus does too.
Paramount Plus, you see the part 1 on it.
Yeah, there's no part 1 in the title. Descent, after an encounter with the Borg, Data feels his first emotion when he gets angry with the Borg. Data then tries to find ways to recreate the situation in order to feel emotions again, whilst the Enterprise investigates the Borg activity and are bewildered as to why they feel emotions too. It's a really clunkily written hypnosis. Despite using the word whilst, I think it's a poorly written hypnosis. It's not inaccurate, it's just clunky the way they wrote it.
Yeah.
All right. Is there an S in the title?
No.
Oh, so it's actually decent.
Descent. Yeah, there is an S. DESCENT.
Okay. I thought
you meant at the end, but no, there is an S.
I think in the email you have it as decent, and I thought that made sense because of.
That's very possible that the email. I believe you when you tell me.
But I was like,
in the email.
Yeah.
But it's Descent. It's not decent. So anyway, that's Descent. Next week we're gonna stay with Next Gen. We're gonna watch Descent. Until then, live long
time, and prosper.
No, just a little while. It's just a little time.
Or 47 days.
Just turn off your internal chronometers and you'll be fine.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?